The kaleidoscope station floated in space like a metal flower, its long arms reaching out to catch the light of a distant star. Below it lay the planet Kepler 442b, a world that looked dead. No water flowed on its surface. No green plants grew from its ground. No animals walked beneath its sky. For millions of years, nothing had lived there. Dr. Teo stood in the observation deck and looked down at the planet. He had spent 10 years studying dead worlds, looking for the secrets they kept hidden. His brown eyes were tired from reading old data, but they were still sharp, still searching. He wore the white coat of a scientist with blue markings that showed he was a member of the kaleidoscope station. Professor Naya walked up beside him. She was tall, very tall, with skin that shimmered like crystal in the light. Her species, the Vextari, had walked among the stars long before humans learned to build ships. She looked at the dead world with curiosity. "What do you see?" she asked. Her voice sounded like wind chimes. Teo smiled a little. "I see a story that wants to be told," he said. "Somewhere down there, something important happened. Something important enough that someone wanted to hide it forever." That morning, Teo and his team had found something. The deep-digging machines, robots small enough to fit through cracks in the rock, had sent back pictures of something that should not exist. Beneath the hard ground of Kepler 442b, hidden under thousands of layers of stone, was a door. Not a natural door made by water or wind. A door that someone had built. A door that had been locked for 50,000 years. The team worked all day to open it. They were careful, very careful. Old technology could be dangerous. Old doors could hide traps. But when the door finally slid open, no alarms sounded. No weapons fired. Just dust fell away. Dust so old that it had become part of the rock itself. Inside the vault, the light from the team's lamps touched something that made everyone stop breathing. Machines, technology, equipment that was beautiful and strange. Nothing broke when they moved it. Nothing fell apart. Everything was preserved, waiting, as if it had just been put away yesterday. But the real discovery was the hologram machine. It stood in the center of the vault like a statue of glass. When Teo activated it, the machine began to hum. A sound like singing, a sound like sadness. Then the image appeared. Teo stood in the lab now, replaying that moment for the 100th time. The hologram flickered to life in the darkness. A massive figure appeared, 7 feet tall or maybe more. The figure wore armor that seemed to drink the light, armor so dark it looked like it was made from night itself. The armor moved smoothly, like the figure wearing it had been born with it on their skin. The Precursor warrior, and it had to be a precursor, from the great civilization that had ruled the galaxy millions of years ago, looked around as if searching for something, or someone. Then the ground beneath them broke open. The creature that came out of the ground was nothing like anything Teo had ever seen before. It was vast, too large to fit in a building, too strange to have a real shape. Its body looked like it was made of shadow and screaming darkness. It had teeth, so many teeth, in mouths that opened in places where mouths should not be. And it was hungry. Teo could feel the hunger even through the old hologram. But the Precursor warrior did not run, did not surrender, did not fall to the ground in fear. Instead, the warrior moved. The movement was perfect. The warrior dodged left when the creature struck right. When the shadow creature opened its many mouths to bite, the warrior was already somewhere else. The warrior fought with weapons made of light, weapons that burned where they touched the creature's dark skin, but the weapons did not kill it. They only made it angry. For what seemed like hours but was probably only minutes, the battle went on. The warrior was faster than anything so large should be. The warrior thought 3 steps ahead of the creature's moves, as if reading its mind before it even attacked. When the creature was strong, the warrior used its strength against it, turning it into a weakness. When the creature tried something new, the warrior was already ready. But slowly, Teo realized something that made his heart feel heavy. The warrior was losing. The creature was too big, too powerful, too much. With each movement, the warrior seemed to slow down just a little bit. Each dodge took longer. Each strike with the light weapons burned less bright. The warrior was running out of time, running out of strength, running out of everything. Then something happened that made Teo understand why this footage had been hidden away for 50,000 years. The image began to break apart. Not the hologram, the space itself. Colors that had no names in any language appeared. The warrior and the creature both seemed to bend, to stretch, to exist in more places than one place at the same time. Then the hologram cut out, gone. The message ended. For a long time, Teo did not move. Neither did anyone else. Dr. Hei-Wan, the team's linguist, stood with her mouth open. She had been trying to read the symbols that surrounded the vault, symbols written in the language of the Precursors, but she had stopped working. "Did we see that?" she asked very quietly. "Did we really see that?" "We saw it," Teo said. His voice sounded strange even to himself. Professor Naya was studying the hologram machine with her scientific eyes. "The technology here is not Precursor," she said slowly. "Or rather, it is Precursor technology, but it was designed to run for thousands of years without stopping. Whoever left this vault wanted to make sure the message would survive. They wanted us to find it." But Teo was not thinking about the technology. He was thinking about the warrior, the way the warrior moved, the way the warrior did not give up, even when winning was impossible, the way the warrior fought with a kind of intelligence that was not the cold logic of advanced machines, but something else, something harder to explain. Something that reminded him of something he had studied a long time ago, something from human history that most intelligent species had forgotten about. He looked at the frozen image of the warrior on the screen, captured in a moment between one movement and the next. "Get me everything we have about human warfare," he said to Hei-Wan. "Ancient human warfare, tactics, philosophy, stories. All of it." Professor Naya turned to look at him. "Why?" she asked. Teo did not answer right away. He just looked at the frozen warrior, suspended in time, refusing to break even at the end. "Because," he finally said, "I think we just found a message from someone exactly like us, and I think they were trying to warn us about something." Outside the vault, on the dead planet Kepler 442b, the wind blew across the empty ground. Nothing moved. Nothing lived. But deep below the surface, in the place where the old door had been opened for the first time in 50,000 years, the hologram machine hummed softly to itself, its message finally heard. The news traveled through the galaxy like fire spreading through dry wood. Within 3 days, ships began arriving at the Kaleidoscope Station. Big ships, important ships. Ships that carried the leaders of the greatest civilizations that still existed in the known universe. Teo watched them arrive from the observation deck. He had expected maybe a few scientists, some ambassadors from different worlds. Instead, he saw military vessels, research cruisers, and command ships of every color and design. The Vextari came in ships made of living crystal. The Corden arrived in vessels that looked like frozen ice, but were harder than any metal in the galaxy. The Tesh hive mind came in a swarm of smaller ships that moved together like schools of fish. The Council of Galactic Species wanted to see the footage. They wanted to see it with their own eyes. The meeting room on the station was the biggest space they had. It was built to hold 500 people, though people was not always the right word. Some of the beings in the room had no bodies, like humans thought of bodies. Some floated, some were more light than matter. But they all sat in their chairs, or hung in the air above their chairs, and they all watched as Teo activated the hologram. The image of the Precursor warrior appeared. The ancient battle began again. The creature of shadow and darkness came up from the ground. The fight went on. The room was very silent. When the hologram ended, the silence continued for a long time. Then they started talking. "This is an ancient recording," said Minister Cole, who spoke for the Vextari. "The Precursor civilization ended 12,000 years ago. This footage is a historical artifact, nothing more." "But what does it mean?" asked Dr. Rai from the crystalline Cordan. "What is the creature?" "We have no records of anything like this in any of our databases." Dr. Hei-Wan stood up. She had been working without sleep for 2 days, trying to translate the Precursor text. Her hands shook a little from tiredness, but her voice was steady. "We have translation," she said. She activated a second screen that showed the words from the vault, along with the meanings below them. "The Precursor text is very old, very formal, but the message is clear. The text speaks of something called the Devourers. The creature in the footage is one of them." "Devourers?" someone asked. "The text says they come from another dimension," Haiwan continued. "They do not belong to our reality. They exist in the spaces between spaces, and according to the Precursor writings, they are attracted by something, by life reaching a certain level of development, by consciousness becoming too bright, too strong. When consciousness reaches this level, it sends out a signal, and the Devourers come." The room became very noisy. Everyone was talking at the same time. Some laughed, some argued, some looked afraid. "This is mythology," said one voice. "Stories and legends. The Precursors were advanced, yes, but they were still only flesh and thought. They created explanations for things they did not understand. This Devourer is probably just a rare creature, an animal we never encountered. It has nothing to do with us now." But Teo noticed something. One of the council members was not talking. Dr. Minjun was human, like him. She was the director of the Kaleidoscope Station, and she had been quiet since the hologram ended. Now she stood up. "The text says something else," Minjun said. She looked directly at Haiwan. "What about the last part? The part after the battle?" Haiwan's face became serious. She had not shown this part to anyone yet, not to the full council. She activated another translation on the screen. "The last message says this," Haiwan read. "We have failed. We have driven the creature back through the dimensional walls, but we know it will come again. The cycle repeats. Always it repeats. We do not know who will find this message. We do not know if you will be ready. But know this. The Devourers will return. They return every 50,000 years, drawn by the beacon of growing consciousness. This is not a story. This is a warning." The room became very quiet again, different kind of quiet. A quiet that felt heavy, like something pressing down on them from above. "How long?" asked Minister Cole. Tayo understood the question. How long had it been since the Precursors left the message? How long until the cycle returned? "We analyzed the technology in the vault," Professor Naya said, "measuring the decay rate of certain elements, checking the degradation of the hologram storage systems. Our calculations suggest the Precursors left this message approximately 50,000 years ago. Give or take 3,000 years. There is always margin of error in these calculations. No one needed to do the math. Everyone in the room could do it instantly. 50,000 years ago, the cycle was complete, or nearly complete. Somewhere close in time, next week, next month, next year, the Devourers could come back hungry, could come back looking for civilization to consume." "This is unacceptable," said one of the leaders. "We have science. We have technology. We have weapons that can destroy stars. We do not fear creatures that belong in stories." But Teo was watching the hologram. The frozen image of the Precursor warrior, caught in a moment between one strike and the next, refusing to give up even when defeat was certain. Even when hope was gone, The warrior kept fighting. What was the warrior? Someone asked. What species created that kind of warrior? That kind of determination? What civilization had that? HFY looked at Teo. He looked back at her. They both knew the answer, but neither wanted to say it out loud. According to the oldest sections of the text, HFY said slowly, the warrior was from a species that had evolved on their own world without help from the precursors, a species that was young and new and aggressive. The precursor text calls them something that is difficult to translate, but it means something like the adapters, or the ones who refuse to break. Do they have a real name? Asked Dr. Min-jun, but she already knew. Teo could see it in her face. She already knew. The oldest translation, HFY said, suggests the precursors called them humanity. In ancient precursor language, the word means those who survive. The room exploded in noise. Some spoke out in surprise, some in anger, some in fear. Humans were not supposed to be this old, this advanced, this important. Humans were a young species. Humans had just recently learned to build big ships and leave their home world. But Teo understood something that most of the others in the room did not. The footage was not from the distant past alone. The footage was a warning from one version of humanity to another, from cousins separated by time and probability and dimensional walls, from a family that kept appearing, kept fighting, kept surviving no matter what the universe threw at them. And now, perhaps, it was humanity's turn again. Min-jun met Tao's eyes across the room. Her expression was calm, determined, ready. In that moment, Tao understood that they both knew what had to happen next. No matter what the council decided, no matter what the other species wanted, humanity would have to prepare, because the devourers were coming. And if the precursor warning was correct, only humanity would know how to stand against them. 3 weeks after the council meeting, Teo sat alone in the vault where it all began. The hologram machine was still playing the ancient footage on a loop, the same battle repeating again and again. He had watched it so many times now that he could almost predict every move the precursor warrior would make. Almost, but not quite. There was always something new in the fight, always some small movement that showed adaptability, some quick decision made in the space of a heartbeat. The warrior was not following a program or using some ancient script. The warrior was thinking, creating, fighting not by calculation, but by will. Captain Jiwoo found him there. She was human like him, a captain in the Kaleidoscope Station's Military Defense Division. She had short black hair and a scar on her left cheek from a training accident when she was younger. She carried herself with the kind of confidence that came from years of discipline and study. She stopped beside Teo and watched the hologram without saying anything for several minutes. "You see it too," she said finally. It was not a question. "See what?" Teo asked. "The way it thinks," Jiwoo said. She pointed at the hologram. "Look at this moment here. The creature is going to strike from 3 different directions at once. Impossible to block all 3, impossible to run from. But the warrior does not try to block or run. The warrior runs toward the creature instead, uses the creature's own momentum against it. It is human thinking, pure human thinking. 1,000 years ago, my ancestors used the same technique. It is called turning the enemy's strength into weakness." Teo nodded. He had realized the same thing. But hearing Jiwoo say, it made it more real somehow. "I have been studying human combat history," Teo said. "Every major military victory we have ever had followed the same pattern. We took what the enemy had and turned it into something we could use. We did not try to be stronger or faster or more advanced. We were smarter about it. We understood that the best weapon is not always the biggest." Jiwoo sat down next to him. They watched the hologram in silence for a moment. The council is meeting again tomorrow, Jiwoo said. Did you hear? I heard. They want to know what to do about the warning. Some of them want to do nothing, Jiwoo said. She sounded angry. They say the warning is ancient history. They say the precursors were just afraid of something they did not understand. They say modern science and modern weapons mean we do not need to worry about fairy stories. And the others? The others want to run. The Vextaris say we should abandon the outer systems and retreat to the galactic core. The Cordon want to build shields around their home world. The Tesh are talking about disconnecting themselves from the collective, going into hiding. Nobody wants to stand and fight, because nobody knows what they would be fighting against. Teo understood. The Devourers were not like conventional enemies. You could not shoot them with traditional weapons. You could not negotiate with them. The footage showed that even the ancient Precursor warrior, with technology and training so advanced it seemed like magic, had barely survived against one of them. But we know something they do not, Teo said quietly. We know that it can be done. The warrior in this footage fought the creature and lived to tell the tale, or at least lived long enough to leave this message. That means it is possible to survive. That means there is a way. Jiwoo's expression sharpened with interest. What way? Before Teo could answer, alarms began to sound throughout the station. They moved quickly, years of training taking over. They ran from the vault and toward the main control room. Dr. Haewon was already there, her hands moving frantically across the control panels. Minjun stood beside her, her face pale. What is happening? Teo demanded. Deep space sensors, Minjun said. Something is happening at the edge of the system. Reality is breaking. Explain, Jiwoo said. Haewon pulled up a visual display. At first, it showed nothing but empty space. But then they could see it. A disturbance. A ripple in reality itself, like dropping a stone into still water, except the water was the fabric of existence itself. And the ripples were spreading outward, slow but steady, like something heavy was pressing through from somewhere else. The Devourers, Professor Naya said from the communication panel. She had opened a channel to the Council of Species ships in orbit. The creatures are coming. This is exactly what the Precursor warning described. They are breaking through the dimensional walls. Teo felt very calm suddenly. Everything made sense now. Everything they had studied, everything they had discovered, it all led to this moment. How long? He asked Haewon. The disturbance is growing larger, she said. At current rate of expansion, full breach will occur in approximately 7 days. Maybe 10 if we are lucky. Lucky, someone repeated bitterly. Teo turned to Minjun. We need to gather all the human scientists and engineers on this station. All of them. I do not care what job they have or where they are stationed. They need to come to the vault immediately. Minjun looked at him. You have a plan. It was not a question, and Teo did have a plan, or at least the beginning of one. He was thinking about the Precursor warrior again, about the moment at the very end when the space itself had begun to break. He was thinking about the text that said the Precursor civilization had created something called a dimensional anchor, technology that could lock the creatures back behind their dimensional walls. The text mentioned that the Precursor warriors had defeated the Devourers before, Teo said slowly. Not killed them, but locked them away, trapped them. The text called it a dimensional anchor. It was a weapon that did not destroy the enemy but imprisoned them. We do not have such technology, Professor Naya said. No, Teo agreed. But the vault does. And maybe, just maybe, we can understand how it works. And maybe, if humans think the way this warrior thinks, we can build something similar, something just as good. Jiwoo stood up. Then we should start immediately. If we only have 7 days, then every hour matters. Minjun was already making calls, issuing orders, setting things in motion. The human personnel on the Kaleidoscope station began arriving at the vault within the hour. Engineers and physicists, mathematicians and computer specialists, military strategists and medical doctors, everyone who might have some skill that could help. They gathered in the ancient vault, surrounded by technology that was 50,000 years old, and they prepared to do something that the modern galaxy said was impossible. They prepared to fight, not with superior force, not with better weapons, but the way their ancestors had always fought, with intelligence, with adaptation, with a refusal to accept that the darkness would win. In the hologram above them, the Precursor warrior continued to fight, continued to move, continued to survive. And for the first time since finding the ancient footage, Teo understood what the warrior was really showing them. Not a record of the past, but a lesson for the future. The Devourers came on the 6th day. Nobody knew exactly what time it happened. One moment, the disturbance in reality was still growing at a steady pace. The next moment, the dimensional walls simply gave way. Reality cracked like old glass, and something enormous came through. Teo was working in the vault when the alarms began to sound. He was deep in the ancient precursor equations, trying to understand the mathematics of dimensional anchoring, when the emergency signals filled the station with urgent noise. He did not need to ask what was happening. He knew. The Devourers had arrived. He ran toward the control room, but the station was in chaos. People were running everywhere, some toward escape pods, some toward shelters, some toward their workstations because they did not know what else to do. The displays showed the images from the outer system, and Teo's breath caught when he saw what was there. The creatures were vast, impossible to truly understand at first glance because their forms did not follow normal geometry. They seemed to exist in more dimensions than the human eye could process. When Teo tried to look directly at them, they seemed to hurt his mind. His brain wanted to see them as one shape, but they kept appearing as something different, something that did not fit into normal reality. There were 6 of them, 6 massive creatures, moving slowly through space like sharks moving through water. Jiwoo was already coordinating with the military stations in orbit. She had taken command position and was issuing orders in a calm, steady voice. All non-military personnel to the central station. Engineers and scientists report to Level 7. All weapons officers take position at your stations. This is not a drill. But Teo could see the problem immediately. The weapons were firing. The Council's fleet was shooting at the creatures with every weapon they had. Some weapons were ancient, going back thousands of years. Some were brand new, designed with the latest technology and understanding. All of them were useless. The energy beams passed through the creatures as if the creatures were not there at all. The missiles exploded near the creatures but did no damage. The traditional weapons of the galaxy could not touch the Devourers because the Devourers did not exist entirely in normal space. They were partially in another dimension, partially real and partially not real. They are consuming the outer settlement, HFY reported. She was tracking the data from the planets below. Her voice sounded very small and very sad. Teo watched as one of the creatures moved toward Kepler 442b's largest colony. The colony had 3 million people living on it. He watched as the people tried to run, tried to hide, tried to escape. He watched as the creature simply absorbed the colony, not ate it exactly, but consumed it. The people, the buildings, the entire settlement just became part of the creature, and the creature became slightly brighter. Moving to next target, HFY continued. The creature is heading toward the research station at Kepler 442c, estimated arrival in 4 hours. All ships that can move, move now, the Council's military commander ordered. Prepare for full retreat to the Galactic Core. But Minjun grabbed Teo's arm. We are not running, she said. Tell me we have something. Tell me you have figured out how to build the dimensional anchor. Teo's heart sank. They had made progress, yes, His team had decoded most of the precursor equations. They understood the general principles of how a dimensional anchor worked. But understanding was not the same as building. Building something that complex, from specifications 50,000 years old, would normally take months, maybe years. They had hours. "We can try," he said, "but Minjun, it might not work. It might not even work at all." "Then we try anyway," Minjun said, "because what is the alternative?" She was right. The alternative was to die, to watch the devourers consume everything and everyone, to let the darkness win. "Get me Sujin," Teo said. "And I need every computer system on this station, and I need volunteers who are willing to take risks that might kill them." What followed was 6 hours of the most intense work Teo had ever experienced in his entire life. Sujin, a human specialist in human enhancement and engineering, led teams that began assembling the dimensional anchor in the vault itself. They could not build it perfectly. There was no time for perfection. But they could build it fast. They could build it strong enough. The equations did not work the way modern science worked. The precursor mathematics was different, was based on principles that had been forgotten in the 10,000 years since the precursor civilization had fallen. But Teo's team kept working, kept calculating, kept adjusting. They used human intuition to fill in the gaps where the ancient text was unclear. They used human creativity to solve problems that should have been impossible to solve. "The next creature is heading toward us," Haywan warned. "Estimated arrival at the station in 90 minutes. Teo looked up from his work. Through the observation window, he could see the creature approaching. It was moving slowly but steadily, drawn to the brightness of consciousness, drawn to the signal of intelligent life gathered together in one place. Ji-Woo appeared in the doorway. She had abandoned her command post. "I need to know what we are going to do," she said. "The crew needs orders. They need to know if we are running or fighting." "We are doing neither," Teo said. "We are creating." "Creating what?" "A trap," Teo said. "Or maybe a cage. Or maybe a door that closes. I am not entirely sure which." He showed Ji-Woo the dimensional anchor. It looked like nothing important. It looked like a collection of metal and wires and strange crystals arranged in patterns that made no sense. But inside that arrangement was mathematics. Inside that arrangement was understanding. Inside that arrangement was the accumulated knowledge of a human civilization that had lived and died 50,000 years ago, reaching across the void of time to save its cousins. "If it does not work," Ji-Woo asked. "Then we will die," Teo said. "But we will die fighting. We will die trying. And that will mean something." The creature was very close now. So close that its non-geometric shape filled the observation window. It was vast. It was ancient. It was hungry. "Activate the anchor," Minjun said. Sujin's hands moved across the controls. The anchor began to hum, a sound like singing, a sound like the universe itself taking a breath. "Come on," Teo whispered. "Come on, work, please work." The creature moved closer, closer. It was almost touching the station now, almost consuming everything. Then the dimensional anchor activated completely. Reality bent, space twisted, and something happened that should not have been possible. The creature stopped. It hung in space, suspended, unable to move forward, unable to move backward, caught between dimensions, locked in place by mathematics and determination and human will. For a moment, everyone on the kaleidoscope station held their breath. For a moment, they all understood what they had just done. They had fought something that the greatest civilization in history had barely survived fighting, and they had held it at bay. It was not a victory, but it was not a defeat either. It was proof that humanity could stand, that humanity could fight, that humanity could look into the darkness and refuse to break. The victory lasted for exactly 17 minutes. Then the second creature arrived, and Teo understood what the Precursor warrior had known 50,000 years ago. Victory against one devourer was just the beginning. True victory meant stopping them all, or at least stopping enough of them that the galaxy could survive. The second creature did not approach the station directly. It seemed to understand what had happened to its companion, seemed to understand that the dimensional anchor was a trap. Instead, it began consuming the other human settlements in the system. One by one, colony after colony disappeared. 3 million people in one settlement, 5 million in another. The creatures did not even need to attack. The humans simply evacuated as fast as they could, and the creatures followed, consuming everything they left behind. "We are losing people," Heywan reported, and she sounded like she was breaking apart inside. "The evacuation fleet is full. The ships cannot carry everyone. Some of them are staying behind. They are deciding to stay so that others can escape." In the command room, everyone was very quiet. Teo understood what this meant. There were 50 million people in the outer colonies. There was room on the evacuation ships for maybe 30 million at most. The mathematics was simple and terrible. 20 million people would have to be left behind. "We need to build more dimensional anchors," Jiwoo said. She was standing at the tactical display, watching the movements of the creatures. "If we can trap all 6 of them—" "We cannot," Teo interrupted. He hated saying it, but it was the truth. "The anchor we built required all our resources, all our time, all our knowledge. To build another one, we would need days we do not have. We would need materials we cannot get. We would need people who have not already burned themselves out with exhaustion." He was not exaggerating. The team that had built the first anchor were still in the vault, still working, still conscious, mostly because of stimulant drugs and pure determination. Some of them had not slept in 40 hours. Some of them were barely able to stand. But Min-jun had an idea. She came to Teo with data in her hands and a look of fierce determination on her face. "The first anchor worked," she said. "It trapped one creature, but it did not destroy it. The creature is still out there, still pushing against the dimensional walls, still trying to break free. What if we do not try to build 6 anchors? What if we build one bigger anchor? One that covers a larger area?" "It would take too much power," Sujin said. She had appeared behind Min-jun, looking like she might collapse at any moment. "The systems cannot generate that much energy." "What if they could?" Min-jun asked. Teo understood where she was going with this. "You want to use the station's core," he said slowly. "You want to use the reactor that powers the entire kaleidoscope station as the power source for the anchor." "It is the only way," Min-jun said. "The Thorin Nebula is only 3 days of travel away. If we move the station there, if we use the data from the Precursor Vault about why that location was chosen for the original battle, we can build a permanent anchor, an anchor large enough to trap all the remaining creatures." "If we do that," Jiwoo said carefully, "the station will be powerless. Without the reactor, nothing works. Life support will fail, communications will shut down, we will be defenseless." "We will be heroes," Min-jun said. "We will save the galaxy." The room was very quiet. Everyone understood what she was proposing. It was a suicide mission, but it was a suicide mission with a purpose. They would travel toward the Devourers, moving the station itself into position, and they would activate an anchor so large and so powerful that it would be felt across multiple dimensions. They would use themselves and their station as the key to locking away the creatures. And when the anchor activated, they would all be stranded on a powerless station, slowly freezing, slowly suffocating, waiting for rescue that might never come. "I will not ask anyone to volunteer," Min-jun said. "Anyone who wants to evacuate with the other civilians can do so. There is no shame in it. This is my choice, my decision. I will not force it on anyone else." But people volunteered. The human personnel on the Kaleidoscope station, all of them, volunteered to stay. Engineers and scientists, soldiers and cooks, maintenance workers and doctors. 437 people decided that they would rather die trying to save the galaxy than live knowing they ran away. They began the preparations immediately. The ship's navigation team calculated the trajectory to the Thorin Nebula. The engineering teams worked on modifications to move the station. Sujin and her specialists began building the larger anchor, using every part of the station's non-essential systems to create the framework. Teo worked harder than ever before. The mathematics for the larger anchor were even more complex than the first one. The calculations had to be perfect because there would be no second chance, no do-overs. If something went wrong, 400 people would die, and the creatures would still be free to consume the galaxy. 2 days into the journey toward the nebula, the Vextari sent a message. Professor Naya was among them. "We are proud of you," the message said. "You are showing the universe what it means to be human, what it means to stand when running would be easier. You have honored your species with your choice." On the third day, Jiwoo came to Teo where he was working in the vault. She looked exhausted, but there was something calm about her now, something at peace. "The creatures are following us," she said. "The Devourers understand what we are trying to do. They are moving toward the nebula too, trying to reach us before we can activate the anchor." "How much time do we have?" Teo asked. 18 hours, Jiwoo said. "Maybe less." Teo looked at the dimensional anchor that was taking shape in the vault. It was beautiful in a strange way. Beautiful and terrible. It was a monument to human determination, built from the pieces of the station they had chosen to sacrifice. "Then we had better work faster," he said. For 18 hours, they did not stop. They did not sleep. They barely stopped to eat or drink. Every person on that station gave everything they had, poured every ounce of their will and intelligence and strength into making the anchor work. The Devourers were visible now through the observation windows. 6 massive creatures moving through space toward them, moving toward the last humans who stood in their way. "Anchor activation in 5 minutes, Sujin announced. Her voice was steady, even though her hands were shaking. Teo looked at the equations one last time. Everything checked out. Every calculation was correct. The mathematics were perfect. It would work. Or it would fail completely, and nothing would matter anymore. He stood beside Min Jun as they watched the countdown. 400 people stood throughout the station at their positions, ready to activate a system that would destroy the station and kill them all. "It has been an honor," Min Jun said. "The honor was mine," Teo replied. And as the creatures drew close, as the darkness approached, Teo found himself thinking about the Precursor warrior, that ancient human fighting in an ancient time against an ancient enemy. Not because winning was possible, but because trying meant something, because standing meant something, because refusal to break meant everything. "Activate," Min Jun said softly. The dimensional anchor activated.